Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me. It's 10 past midnight, and I'm in the north, and it's quite cold tonight. So I'm in bed with a cup of tea, and the dogs are paying and nipping at my heels. So I thought I'd bring you one of the accounts that I've been working on, and I also wanted to discuss a number of other accounts where we hear of these snarling, growling creatures that shadow people within the trees, and red eyeshine is often reported. And I'm sure you would have heard that yourselves from many witnesses. And the first gentleman lives in Devon and Cornwall in a little village called St Mawgan. And he said, "Hi, I've seen you on the British Bigfoot UK programme on YouTube. And I realised I may have seen the creatures that you talked about years ago when I was working. I'm kind of in shock, to tell you the truth, so I was unsure whether to get in touch or not. But you said it was okay to report anything to you, so I thought I'd write in and explain what happened. I used to live in Devon and Cornwall in a little village called St Mawgan, and I was unsure what to write, as I wanted to say, I've seen one of those creatures you see for sure, and I think there was another one with it, but I only clearly saw one. I know what I saw while I was out making cages in the wood for my boss's pheasant hunt, and as I said, it was just outside St Mawgan. I used to hear wood knocks down there all the time, and I wasn't really sure what it was at first. After, when I asked my boss, I asked about the noises and the things that I'd seen, and he said, "Oh yeah, we call them woodwoes." Do you know if there's any more reports from that area? And I hope you get this. And as I said, it was about 20 years ago that it happened, and I was in my early 20s, maybe 22 or 23 years old, I think. And as I said, I lived in a village called St Mawgan, not far from Newquay, and there are lots of cliff roads and high wall roads when you get out of the town. I was in this field, and the only way I can describe it is that it was wooded all around with steep hills, but with a field at the bottom. My old boss used to keep pheasants and other birds up there, and people paid him to shoot on his land. He and I were up on the side of the hill on the far edge, and I remember climbing through vegetation and trees to get there. And he also owns land near Dartmoor too. Anyway, I was talking to him about the pheasants and the birds, and afterwards, me and another guy and his daughter were left there to finish off their work. We were left alone. I remember getting finished and hearing a wood knock about 30 yards away. I couldn't see anything. I looked at them, the father and his daughter, and they looked at each other and said nothing. So we just carried on packing up. The wood knocking starting to get louder and closer, and it made me jump. And once again, they didn't say anything, so I didn't say anything. They just carried on working, so I did. I was kind of thinking perhaps it could have been a woodpecker, but no. Then they left, and I stayed behind because they only had a little van. I had to wait to get picked up later, and this was the reason I'd stayed there on my own. I couldn't make out where the sound of the knocking was coming from. I could still see the edge of the forest where we'd been before, when I'd heard it earlier on, and I waited on the edge of the forest, and I could hear rustling in the bushes. I looked, but I couldn't see anything. And then I guess my eyes adjusted, and I began to focus because I saw a face. This face was looking back at me, and there were clicks and whistles everywhere around me. I don't know why, I still wasn't sure what it was. I walked forward to try and have a better view, and it stood up. I don't know why, but I just felt it was not fully grown. It was a male. It was about 6'5" tall. It was kind of copper colour, and it looked right at me. And it was gone in a shot as it heard my old boss's Land Rover returning to collect me. I got in and I said nothing. And he was like, "What's up with you?" And I said, "Has anyone ever said anything about Bigfoot up here?" And he said, "Oh yeah, we just call them woodwoes here," he replied. "Just leave them be." I've never told anyone about this, and I don't know why I'm telling you. I felt that he'd been watching us all the time that we were out there. And I wish I could explain it all more fully to you as I'm sitting here remembering things about the day. I've heard people say that you get a smell with them, but I didn't get a smell. And I don't know why there would be one. Anyway, I've told you now, and I'm glad I did, because I know what I saw. Now, as this gentleman mentioned, Newquay is on the coast. It's on the southwest coast of England, right down at the very bottom. And there are other reports in Devon and Cornwall. And there are certainly reports along the same stretch of coast, just a little bit further along the coast. There's another sighting of a red-eyed creature that was reported in January of 2010. And it was back in January of 2010 in an area called Barnstable on the southwest coast of England. And it was approximately 5:30 a.m, so it was still dark at the time. And I was driving along, heading north on the A39 from Camelford to Barnstable. That particular day, my partner was also in the car along with me, as he had an early appointment in the same town. There were no street lights down that road and no houses around, so it could be pretty eerie there at the best of times. But this particular day, heading towards us on the other side of the road, was what looked like a set of glowing red eyes. And they were moving, as if they were on a dog that was walking fast, heading in our direction, if that makes sense. But there was nobody or anything there. It was just these red eyes. Then they just disappeared. I thought I must have been seeing things as I was tired, but it spooked me. So I sped up a bit. And it was at that point my partner said, "Did you see them?" And I just said, "Yep, don't talk about it." And I drove as fast as I could from the area. In hindsight, we should have talked about it later, but it was so scary. I really just didn't want to talk about it. I just wanted to forget it. And that's natural with the witnesses. Lots of them do that. And I did that myself. You try and bury the memory. And you try coming up with reasons for why you saw it. So it's something that you did or something that the person with you did. And you never get an answer. You just pull yourself to pieces actually trying to work it all out. But it is a process that you go through. And you're incredibly lucky if, like me and this person, you have somebody with you at the time when you see them. But like the first gentleman, he didn't have that privilege. He was on his own. So you don't even have anybody there that you can say, I'll give you, for instance, the girl I was with, I call him the ape man and she calls him the gorilla man. And you can say things like, did he have a really dark tan face? And she'll say, yeah, it was like leathery, like an old leather couch. You have that ability. Or even when the person wasn't with you, they were a fellow witness to a different experience in another area in the country. You still have that recognition, that validation. But when they're out there on their own and they're trying to describe an impossible face in an impossible situation, it's incredibly hard to do. And then to sit down at home and try and write that out in an email to somebody and try and convey everything that happened within that moment. Some of the greatest writers in the world would struggle with that. It's not an easy process. No matter what app you use or whether you've got Google Voice or not, actually getting it down what happened on that day is impossible. And I've said millions of times over the years, I wish somebody would invent a machine that they can put on my head and then they can just see what I saw that day and then, problem solved. They wouldn't ask me the millions of questions that they asked me. But as I said, we're on the coastline again, and we've talked about cryptids being around the coastal areas and the estuaries and following the rivers in. And I don't know if it's just that is what they're doing, or there's something there that I'm missing, I'm not understanding, but that seems to be the way. And another report on that same stretch of coastline came in to me last year, and it was a gentleman who reported something that happened whilst on holiday in the area in 2018, and he called it a growling creature, the Devon beast. And I was chatting with one of my friends who also has an interest in the word, Steve, and he's wonderful. And we were just discussing that not only do we get face-to-face accounts that come in and figures that are seen, but we get an amount of growls and howls that get reported across the UK by ordinary people just going about there every day. They hear unexplained screams and whoops and howls and growls, and some reported as screeches or blood-curdling groans. We also have this thing that was reported, I don't even know what to call it, I'm going to have to use the word phenomena, where it sounds like energy is breaking in the area at the time of the sighting. One gentleman who saw also an orange-coloured creature peeking at him behind the tree said it sounded as if an aeroplane was right above his head, like a really loud expulsion of something, so much so that he ducked. He actually thought maybe there was a model airplane just above his head. And quite a few people talk about that noise, that this significant noise that they hear. And as I said, I was talking with this gentleman, and he said, me and my mum went on holiday to Devon in the early 90s, possibly around 95, on a trip to the Devonshire coast. On one evening, we went to visit my auntie and my uncle and my cousins, and they were staying in another holiday camp not too far away. And I remember it was getting a bit late, and we knew the entertainment plan for the holiday park for that evening was pretty much the same that we'd seen at our camp. And we decided to go as we were both hungry, and we could get some food on the way back to camp we were staying at. Now, I remember walking to the car in the car park with Mum, and we were probably talking about what I would like to eat and deciding what to get, when all of a sudden we heard this unusual, freakish growl. We both looked at each other and paused for a moment. But I still remember saying to Mum, don't run, walk quickly to the car. And we just did that. I'm sure it did it again, but slower as we were moving away, but I can't be sure. I just wanted to get to the car quickly, and I don't remember seeing anything, neither does Mum. And at the time, we weren't waiting round to find out what had made the sound. And being young, my mum said a few days after that it was the owner's dog who was loose on the park, which I found out was just a little white lie she told me at the time, so I wouldn't freak out and be scared. And of course, by the next time round we ever go anywhere, she didn't want me to feel afraid again in the dark of something unseen in the bushes. And because I asked her not so long ago, she remembered hearing that growl all those years ago, and her eyes widened, and she said, yeah, I remember. And that was just freaky. And we both talked about it. We both agreed it didn't sound like a dog, because we would not have stopped or reacted in the way we did. We even talked about a big cat, but I wouldn't say it was cat-like. I've heard enough big cats because we lived next to Blackpool Zoo. And I used to go there often, and even in the mornings we'd hear the tigers and the lions roaring, and it was not the same noise. This gentleman went on to have another encounter in his early 20s, and that you will find as you're listening to these podcasts is very significant. Many people have more than one experience, and it can be a small number of experiences that'll lead over a number of years, or there can be a huge gap in it, like here from 9 to 20, and 9 to 22, something like that. Similar situation. He was coming home at night. He'd been out. He got on the bus, and as most people know, when they live in those towns that are on the edge of the Greenbelt, sometimes it's quicker to get off the bus early and walk through the fields to get where you're going, rather than get into town and then have to get yourself back out of town again. And he did just that. He went for the shortcut, which most people where I live do the same. And he said he had that feeling of being shadowed. He knew that something was in the bushes out in front of him far away, and when he got there this thing growled and made this noise. If it had stayed quiet, he would never have known it was there. So why did it growl? Was it to move him off, entice him in? Was it a warning, or was he meant to hear it? All these questions I ask myself on a daily basis, and I'm sure that you do the same, whether a witness or listener. Now, I wanted to show you how many times this pattern crops up in one small area. So, the first accounts that I gave you were all along the southeast coast, only within a few miles of each other. So we'll go somewhere else. We'll pick up and we'll move somewhere else. And another area that we could go is Barn Woods, and Barn's on the southwest coast of England. So completely on the other side of the coast. And let's see if there are any cases that kind of match. Now, like many other historic towns and cities, Barn has its fair share of ghost stories and UFO sightings, with many documented sightings at various locations in and around the town. One of Barn's allegedly most haunted locations are the ancient Barn Woods on the western outskirts of town, and it's the woods that interest me. Now, these woods date back hundreds of years and they have a long history of ghost sightings. And that always gets me interested because that means there's something about that area that is putting out this phenomenon. Now, one of the most reported sightings is that of a large black dog-like creature. Now, over time, as history has gone on, we would have changed the name from it. In the beginning, it would have been a devil dog or a devil hound. And then as we move on, it becomes a shuck or a shug. And now we call them different names: dogmen, werewolves, canids, wolvers. You know, there's a multitude of names out there for them, but England's always had a black dog. And they said that this dog was said to observe people while out in the woods. So hundreds of years ago, you've got people saying there's something in those woods and it's shadowing us. And in 2019, you've got people saying there's something in those woods and they're shadowing us. Now, many people report a feeling of being watched or shadowed by these invisible beings. So much so, some people have coined the phrase invisible life forces because you don't always have the look, some would say look, of the first gentleman who had a face-to-face. You know it's in there, you can feel that it's in there, and you know that you're being shadowed, but you don't actually see the face, and it does give the impression of an invisible being. Now, although the creature never actually leaves the protective tree line, it is said that this dog at Barn can be heard growling loudly at anyone who is unfortunate enough to encounter its ghostly presence. Although there is a report of a creature at Barn reported after this account. And I was thinking, and I was writing, it's almost like Schrodinger's creature. What's better, to be on the outside of the woods, not knowing what is within, or to be within the inside of the woods, face to face? It's, you know, it's kind of a dilemma, isn't it? So, this black dog of legend, or shuck as it's sometimes known, is described as a lot bigger than the average sized dog. It's normally said to have a long, shaggy coat, red eyes that glow, long teeth, and a slavering mouth. And they disappear as mysteriously as they appear. And they are described as simply vanishing into thin air. Now, a local paranormal investigation team recently visited the Barnwoods with a reporter from the Barn Local News. And it was reported that two members of the team refused to enter the wood at the very beginning after experiencing an extreme fear on the perimeter of the tree line, with one breaking down into tears for no particular reason. Now, the remaining members who did enter the wood were reported to make a quick escape through a gap in the perimeter hedge after hearing the growling of what was thought to be the black dog. One member of the team quoted the following regarding the loud growling noise and that he'd heard it from within the woods. The noise was really strange. It totally freaked everybody out. As we were in a wood, the natural explanation of it being an animal springs to mind. But having experienced the sheer loudness of the growl and how it seemed to surround us, I'm convinced it was not an animal. It shook everyone up. And as a result, this part of the investigation came to a very rather hasty end, he said. So I was just getting a drink of my cup of tea. If we take from this account all the ghostly aspects and remove them, underneath all of that noise, what we are left with are these signs, these red eye glow, growls and howls, and creatures that stay hidden and shadow you within the trees to the point that you're picking up on it on your animal brain, and you're getting that feeling of being watched, that feeling that you need to leave the area. And if we had a better understanding of our cryptid habits and noises, this may not have been reported to the paranormal realm as a paranormal account. But alas, as always, this account became lost in the paranormal databases. I wonder just how many more slip through our fingers and become reported as howling ghosts or, devil dogs. Cryptids in woodlands all across the UK, hidden within the trees, with red eyeshine. Red eyeshine has been reported here in the UK since man learnt to speak. It is in all of our history and folklore. The creature emitting the light has a name that changes, as I said, as history does. But at the core, something has been walking our lands for as long as time. And that something has red eyes and red eye glow, as you can see from the reports. For all these creatures here were described as devil hounds, the next report has all a similar accounts. And this is the creature report from Bourne, and that came in 2013. I live in Spalding, Lincolnshire, and last week, Thursday, about 5:30, I went to walk my dog at Bournemouth. It was a cold night with a bit of rain, and it just starting to spit as I got there. So that's light rain for anyone who's not from north. So there were not many people around. I went up to the lake area where there was a bench, and I just sat down for a rest. Before I moved on, I just sat there for a bit. But I know Bourne has its fair share of big cat sightings, so I'm always on the lookout because I love the cryptid side of the UK, especially the big cats. I was hoping I'd see a cat print or a cat mark, and I sat there for a long time and finally decided to go and have a look around the trees there. Anyway, as I walked away from the bench, I could hear what sounded like two rocks being smashed together in the woods near me, and it was a clacking noise. So I assumed some kids were mucking about, so I thought it was just time to leave. But on the way back to the car, there was something keeping up with me in the trees. I was being followed by someone making grunts, like they were coughing and spitting. I don't think they were trying to be stealthy. I think I was supposed to hear it. So I turned around and I could not believe what I saw. There was a creature watching me from the trees. It had reddish coloured hair all over its body, and it was about 4 to 5 feet tall, but it wasn't stood up. It was hunched over, not standing upright, and it was also crouching with a stick in its hand behind the tree. And it watched me for a second, sized me up, and moved off into the trees. So I followed it, and I don't know why. I did it without thinking. I just walked off after it as it walked away until it just seemed to vanish. It was nowhere to be seen. It was almost like it had sunk underground, and I finally realised I could be in danger, and I left scared and a bit confused. Now let's move hundreds of miles north to give an idea of just how easy it is to find a cluster of reports like these. Once again, these accounts feature the sighting of a cryptid, red eyeshine, and growls. So we'll go up to Yorkshire. Eyeshine in the Wood, 2014. And this came in from a witness, and the account came in to me by a member of the paranormal community. This is the area I had my sighting. So this is from a witness reporting another account. It was at nighttime sighting, and we just finished a paranormal investigation at this location. We're all walking back to the cars, which were about 20 minutes walk away from where we currently were. We all saw a glowing pair of eyes looking at us from the trees. They were staring at us, and it was easy to see that they were not bird eyes nor a fox, as the eyeshine was too tall to be on a ground animal. The whole incident really creeped us out at the time. And I've since been back to this place, and I can confirm from daylight visit that where it was stood, there was a huge gap between the tree line and the ground, and the tree closest to where the eyes would have been has no low branches or anything that a bird could have been sat on. The path we use is on a disused railway track that is left to nature and all overgrown. There's a flowing river, and there's an area that has a disused mine. And it was this mine we were planning on investigating before we turned back. I will be going back to document this area and doing up a follow-up investigation. And regular listeners may have picked up on that once again, we're on the old railway lines with the very steep embankments that are left to nature and they're overgrown. And most of them now are the National Bank route. And I think when I looked on the map, this is exactly that area. Now, not too far away, only a couple of miles, which is nothing, believe me, for a feral creature or a cryptid. A couple of miles is absolutely nothing to them. So the ivy den creature, and this had red eyes as well. It's the 1980s, this, and the gentleman who reported it, his name is Dave. And the area I think he was in is Hackenthorpe. And he said, I would like to report something that happened many years ago when I was much younger. I was about 9 or 10 years old. We used to play in the old Hackenthorpe woods, and we'd make dens and swings and stuff out there and just play all day long. One day in the holidays, we were in what we call the Ivy Den at Hackenthorpe in Sheffingfield. I sat on a tree higher up than the swing over a stream. I just sat there watching everybody when suddenly my friends and my brother got up and ran across the stream and up the bank and then off as fast as they could go without saying a word to me. I'm just sat hanging on the branch, not knowing why they ran and whether I should just sit there and wait for them to come back. When I looked down at the stream to see what could have spooked them or a reason for why they ran, I saw a 6 to 7 foot dark figure with the brightest red eyes, and it was running up the side of the stream about 20 feet away, coming in my direction fast. This thing jumped across the stream with ease, which was too wide for anything normal to jump, and it was heading straight towards me. I dropped off that swing as fast as I could, and I legged it running hard. And then I fell, trying to go up the banking. And as I turned to see where it was, and it was just stood at the other side of the stream, staring straight at me. And I set off shouting, "Help." My friend heard me yelling. Thankfully, he came back. And he got me, and he helped me out of there. Not my brother. He was off home without me. During the 1 to 2 minutes this happened, it never made a sound. No thumping of running feet, no sound of a thud or a thump. When it jumped and landed, this was my second sighting of this thing. And I can't talk about that second encounter yet. And I've also seen a dark figure. Oh, he says, I wished it was just my first sighting of the scene, but he saw it later on. It was a dark figure, and I've seen it quite a few times since at work and while out driving. It was up the side bank to the side of my car, using the brush and the shrub to hide him. Now, a very short walk away from both of those accounts in the area is another report that you may find of interest, and they described it as the Roth Valley Bear Dog. I was driving from Bayton to Kilmarsh and using the back road to Rother Valley last night, which would be the 29th of 11, 2008, and I'd seen what looked like a black bear at the side of the road. As I drove past, I thought that's what it was. I looked closer and thought, oh, it's a bear. And then it was a split second dawned on me what I thought I'd seen, and I'm thinking, it's a bear. Now, the next moment, I'm telling myself it's got to be a really big dog. As I looking out of my rearview mirror and wing mirrors for a person walking the dog, but I couldn't see anyone anywhere. It was dark out, and the bear dog was on the other side of the road from me, next to some shrubbery, and I only got a fleeting glance, really, but it did seem very thick set at the top end of its body, like you would expect that of a bear. And I'm guessing it must have been a big black dog. But has anyone else had any similar sightings in that area recently? Well, as we've just attested to, lots and lots of people have. There seems to be many accounts, and I think it's something I'm going to cover, of young children, myself included. So we'll look at just teens, I think up to about 17, 18, that are playing with their friends in the woods and they see something absolutely terrifying. In one of those accounts, I know the older adult stated that it had a stick in its hand, and it was almost an ambush type of scenario, that, when you think about it. And then we remember the girl from Stanley who saw a creature up in the tree. That's in the podcast called Another Report from Concert. And she looked up and saw what she described as almost like an ape-man-like creature, like an ancient caveman, and it had a knife in its hand. And there are reports of them with sticks or using stone tools or knives and things like that. And it's just, it's not to beef up the reports. It's not to make them more exciting. It's what the witnesses report, and that's what they report. So it is happening. These red eyes get reported consistently all across the country, from the tip of Scotland all the way down to to the toe of England, and Wales and Ireland the same. There's accounts of dogman-like creatures and wolf-like creatures go back millennia. The ape-man creatures, the woodwoes, the green man, all of this, it's all mixed within our history, and it's all part of us. And I think that's why people have an attraction to it, that we kind of enjoy the stories and we like to hear them. And for a long, long time, we didn't hear them because people weren't talking about them. Everything was dismissed as paranormal. That word means nothing really. It just means around normal. When you break it down to its basic form, it means around normal, and nothing's normal, is it? It doesn't work like that, the world. So people everywhere across the UK, probably some of you listeners out there as well, have experienced things like this, and you haven't wanted to come forward with it because you don't know who to go and speak to about it. Well, you can always speak to me about it. I am always around somewhere. And I think if I do this correctly, you should be able to see my email. Let's have a look. Let's see if I can leave without it. No, I can't. It'll turn the video off, and I don't want to do that. But my email is all lowercase, and it is debbiehatswell@gmail.com. DEBBIEHATSWELL. So reach out, and I can probably put you in touch with someone in your area that has seen or experienced something similar. Or somebody from anywhere across the country, because we have members everywhere now and witnesses everywhere. So give us a like or a share or a subscribe, and let us know that you're enjoying the podcast and the videos, and it makes it worth me doing them for you. And I'm not sat here talking to myself, but I wouldn't imagine I am. So to everyone that's mailed into me, I am trying my absolute best to get through them. I know I say it over and over again, but the emails keep coming in. We have a live feed coming soon, and I will bring you some of those sighting reports that have come in an email on that live feed. So for now, I wish you all a very good night. I'm going to try and get some sleep, and I'll speak to you all tomorrow. Good night.